Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us today for today's joint American Medical Writers Association Ohio Valley Chapter and Accreditation Council for Medical Affairs webinar. I am Dr. India Crabtree, President of the Ohio Valley Chapter of the American Medical Writers Association, and I am delighted to welcome you all. Our speaker for today is Dr. William Soliman, the founder and CEO of the Accreditation Council for Medical Affairs, or the ACMA, with over 15 years of industry experience as a former pharmaceutical and life sciences senior executive. Dr. Soliman brings a wealth of knowledge to our webinar. He has been featured in various media outlets such as Fox News, Forbes, Al Jazeera, Yahoo Business TV, and ABC News Radio. Dr. Soliman holds a bachelor's degree from New York University and a PhD from Columbia University. Following Dr. Soliman's presentation, we will move on to the Q&A session. Please feel free to submit your questions via the chat, and I will read them out loud for Dr. Soliman to address. Thank you once again, everyone, for your participation, and I hope that you find today's webinar both informative and engaging. We will start in about a minute to just give others time to join. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Crabtree. Again, we'll give people about another minute to join, but while we're waiting, I just wanted to thank Dr. Crabtree and the American Medical Writers Association. ACMA is very happy to be able to collaborate with AMWA, does a lot of important work in the area of medical writing for the medical writing profession. And as we're going to look at today, there's a very strong relationship between what happens within medical affairs and in medical writing, in the medical writing field. So really happy to be able to discuss that today. So with that, I think we'll go ahead and get started. So again, today's focus really is going to be on whether or not board certification in medical affairs for medical writers brings value, and what does it really mean for the profession long term, and also, I think more importantly, what does it mean for the entire profession within medical affairs when it comes to the standards that are being looked at, not just within the industry, but even outside of the industry from regulatory bodies and other agencies, because we are moving really towards a new era within the life sciences profession. And that, when I say life sciences, I mean the pharmaceutical, biotech, diagnostic, medical device industries when it comes to setting standards for our profession. And so this is a very timely talk, I think, in many ways. So again, we're going to discuss what is medical affairs. For those of you that aren't familiar with medical affairs, we're going to get into medical's writing's role in medical affairs. We're going to talk about, of course, about the board certified medical affairs specialist program, or the BCMAS program. You'll hear me refer to it as BCMAS. Again, that's referring to the board certified medical affairs specialist program. Then we'll talk specifically about the BCMAS for medical writers, and then we're going to have a Q&A session as well to give you guys a chance to ask questions. So first, what is medical affairs? And I think to really better characterize and understand medical affairs, we need to understand the role that the pharmaceutical industry plays in the healthcare ecosystem. You can see here there's a lot of different stakeholders in the healthcare ecosystem. It's a very complex system, especially in the United States. And the pharmaceutical manufacturers play a really critical role when it comes to obviously making sure that patients get the medications that they need, that they have the right access to those medications. And so that involves regulatory affairs, R&D, market access, patient support, and it involves medical affairs. So when you think about medical affairs, the way I like to think about it is it's kind of a bridge between R&D and commercial. Now, when we say commercial in the life sciences industry or in the pharmaceutical industry, we're referring to sales and marketing for the most part. And of course, everyone knows what R&D is. This is, of course, where a lot of the magic happens in terms of developing products, researching, doing the initial work and researching products in the drug discovery, early drug discovery phase. Well, medical affairs is right in the middle. But medical affairs is really the area within the pharmaceutical industry that is out there disseminating data, as we're going to get into, but also generating data, especially once the drug has been approved. Typically, pharmaceutical companies, biotech companies, again, device diagnostic companies, they will begin to build out a medical affairs team or a medical affairs department if they don't already have one, usually anywhere between 12 to 18 months before the drug is even approved, because the medical affairs team is out there beginning to educate physicians and other healthcare providers on the disease state from their perspective, and thinking about it from whatever the mechanism of action or pathways that they're going to use to treat that particular disease state. Also, when we talk about medical affairs, it's important to understand that medical affairs has many different areas within it. The area that's probably the most well known is the medical science liaison position, or the medical science liaison team, also called the field-based medical team. And I think that's become probably one of the most popular areas, just because of the sheer number of medical science liaisons that exists, proportionally to other divisions or other subdivisions rather within medical affairs. But we also have medical information specialists who play a really important role. We also have medical directors, pharmacovigilance, and of course we have medical writers as well that are part of medical affairs. So medical affairs, especially in the last, I would say 20 to 25 years, has been really pivotal in playing a role both operationally in supporting commercial R&D, but also now strategically in helping to drive the overall strategy for an organization. So it is becoming very, very important from that perspective. And I think as we see more specialty drugs coming to the market, like biologics and other more drugs that have more complex mechanisms of action, medical affairs will play even a larger and larger role. As a matter of fact, I'll tell you a little statistic. In the last 15 years, there's been over a 350% increase, 350% increase within medical affairs. And I think that's going to go up even more. So a very exciting time to either want to work in medical affairs or to be in the medical affairs space. When you think about medical affairs, I think this diagram here really does a nice job of helping us to understand the different areas that medical affairs can impact. There's science for the sake of science itself, meaning that medical affairs is involved in generating data, because that the generation of that new data may help physicians have better insights into how they can prescribe those particular medications or use those particular devices, for example. There's science for value, meaning that the data that medical affairs generates can become very important from a pharmacoeconomics perspective in terms of generating data to help us to understand the cost effectiveness of a particular product. Is this product worth the cost? Given maybe other alternative therapies that are available, for example. Then there's a science for business, right? And we can't forget that element of it. And I think this is important because it really speaks to the fact that if you're in medical affairs, you need to have strong core business skills. You need to understand your competition. You need to understand what this data means to the business. Because at the end of the day, people that work within medical affairs, they're working for pharmaceutical companies that are for-profit companies. And they're, of course, wanting to do what's best for patients, but they also have a fiduciary responsibility to their shareholders as well. So when you think about medical affairs, it is really the department that helps to collaborate, regulate, and communicate information to healthcare providers. The people within medical affairs really are those scientific experts. So when you are working with people within medical affairs, if they're medical science liaisons, medical directors, they're really the people that are experts in that particular disease state or that particular product, or that product and its competitors, for example. So their job is really to be a peer and provide information in depth to both internal stakeholders. So like I mentioned before, they provide that operational support to their colleagues within the pharmaceutical industry or pharmaceutical company, but also to the external stakeholders. So who are those external stakeholders for medical affairs? We know them in the industry traditionally as KOLs, or key opinion leaders. Now we go by the new term of external experts. But those can be a wide variety of different stakeholders. For example, yes, they can be physicians, but they can also be pharmacists. They can also be scientists who are developing, new types of therapies or modalities, or looking at new studies to help better inform clinical practice. They can be regulators. They can be patient advocates. So it really is a wide gamut. And what that means is that if you work in medical affairs, whether you're a medical science liaison, an MSL, working in medical information, whatever that area is, you've got to make sure that you have a broad skill set. It's not good enough anymore to only have a narrow, let's say, skill set like we used to maybe 20 or 25 years ago in a therapeutic area. Really now, you've got to have many different, because you've got to wear many different hats. So you've got to have a much broader skill set. So that's really, really key. And that's, I think, where broad board certification comes in, because it helps to give you that broad skill set. I think it's a must nowadays in the profession. And that's why we see thousands of people now all over the world that are getting board certified. Medical affairs also ensures that the data and the information that goes out, promotional information, non-promotional information, is aligned and accurate medically. It's aligned with the regulatory framework of approval that was approved, if you're in the US, by the FDA, or equivalent organizations outside of the US, and that again, it's medically accurate. This is key. When I was a medical director years ago, I would sit on the medical legal review committees, or MLR committees, and we would have very vigorous debates about whether or not a particular sentence or an image, for example, was correctly representing, for example, what was the intent of the approval or the indication. These are all important things. And so medical affairs plays a really important role to make sure that the information that goes out is accurate medically, but also is compliant and ethical as well. Medical science liaisons and medical affairs play a really critical role in educating. Again, they're out there educating healthcare providers. They're out there educating internal teams. They can be out there educating patient advocates. When I worked in medical affairs, very often, especially in the rare diseases space, you're out there talking to patient advocacy organizations and groups. You'd be surprised. There's a lot of gaps in knowledge. So this becomes really, really important. And of course, at the end of the day, the major goal of medical affairs is what? It is to improve patient outcomes, right? In the end of the day, if we do all of this, but we don't improve the quality of life of patients, then it's all for naught, right? It's all for nothing. So making sure that we're providing data, we're producing information that helps to better inform healthcare providers so they can better treat patients. So as I mentioned earlier, I think the best way to sum up medical affairs is in two kind of statements: data generation and data dissemination. They're generating data, in terms of new clinical information to help better inform clinical practice. And oftentimes that might be also for the expansion of a label, for instance. Additionally, they're out there disseminating information. That could be through medical science liaisons, as I mentioned earlier, but it also could be through, for example, medical information departments, who play a really important role as a call center as well. So who are some of the key players within medical affairs? So medical science liaisons, as we mentioned. So if you don't know what medical science liaisons are, they are really the face today for, I would argue, pharmaceutical companies to the healthcare providers. Matter of fact, there's a lot of data to show that medical science liaisons, they have significantly more time with physicians and other healthcare providers than traditional pharmaceutical sales reps. So they're out there building relationships with key opinion leaders or external experts, as we mentioned earlier, disseminating information, educating them, and they're really helping to think about ways that the pharmaceutical company can collaborate with that healthcare provider. Medical information, again, think of them as the call center. Oftentimes they are interacting with healthcare providers, patients as well, and answering questions that they have. They're ensuring that there's a compliant framework for how they answer those questions that come through from healthcare providers. There's also drug safety. How do you ensure that there aren't any safety concerns once a drug is out in the real world population? Well, that comes back to real world patient monitoring or real world evidence. Drug safety, also known as pharmacovigilance. So assessing the safety of these products in a real world population. There's also publications or scientific communications, it's called in some organizations. So when you have data, how do you make sure that that data is amplified at medical meetings, at conferences, in various publications, so that the community is aware of that data, of that information? So publication planning, scientific communications plays a very, very important role there as well. And medical writing can become very pivotal in an area like publications, because oftentimes medical writers can be incorporated to write manuscripts, to write any kind of protocols and whatnot. So publications is very, very important as well. So let's take a little bit of a deep dive into medical writing within medical affairs. How does medical writing play a role within medical affairs? I would say it really boils down to three major areas: facilitating communication, which really involves creating documents that bridge the gap between scientific experts, HCPs, and other stakeholders, whether internal or external; ensuring clear and accurate communication of research findings; documentation, playing a role in documenting key aspects of clinical trials. I worked very closely, when I was in the industry, with my medical writers in making sure that they were developing a narrative that was going to support, let's say, for example, getting an approval, let's say, to initiate a phase 4 study. Regulatory compliance as well, crafting documents that adhere to strict regulatory guidelines as well. So some examples of medical writing documents would be, like I mentioned earlier, clinical trial protocols. So this is where you develop protocols for studies that provide a clear roadmap that outline a design, objectives, methodology, and procedures for a clinical trial. This is key, especially because oftentimes these clinical trial protocols need to get approved internally, and of course, by an IRB, because you're working with patients. So making sure that you have clear and very strong communication skills, and you're able to put together a good argument for why you should initiate this clinical trial. What gap is this clinical trial going to help to bridge in the literature, let's say, for a particular therapeutic area? So all this becomes really important. Of course, a very strong understanding of being able to interpret clinical evidence, being able to understand statistics, biostatistics very well. That's very, very important. And these are actually all things that are covered in the board certified medical affairs specialist program, as are regulatory submissions. So understanding the regulatory process and how you fit into that as a medical writer, understanding the grand scheme of things and what that means within the medical affairs ecosystem as well. There's regulatory affairs that have a certain role prior to approval, and they have a different role after approval. So again, this is where board certification can become really, really key in helping to give you that broad skill set of knowledge so you can hit the ground running and really speak from a place of authority. You'd be surprised. Oftentimes I would work with people within medical affairs or regulatory that really didn't have correct information. They had erroneous information, and it created problems. It slowed things down. So if you really want to be seen as that leader, thought leader within the space, again, really having that broad knowledge skill set so you can hit the ground running is so important, and board certification can certainly provide that. Another area is scientific manuscripts. So thinking about scientific manuscripts, for example, looking at being a writer where you're writing for eventually publication into journals, patient education materials. This is very important, especially today where patients more and more are having a larger voice when it comes to what it means for us within the industry and when we're looking to develop clinical trials. I've been to the FDA many times, the FDA headquarters, and I've sat in on meetings where, we've been in, meetings where there's scientists, physicians, and there's patients. They're there. And patients tell us what endpoints matter. I never forget, there was a story of a patient who, young woman, probably in her early 20s, and she had a disease where it was difficult for her to take care of herself when she showered. She didn't have the strength to put her hands above her head just to shampoo her hair. It was tough. It was tough listening to her story. But, for her, that endpoint was important, like being able to have enough strength to just take care of yourself, to go for a walk. So these are all things that are endpoints that we need to think about when we're doing clinical trials. And so when you're writing patient education materials, developing clinical trial protocols, are you considering those things? So again, communication, documentation, understanding that documentation, all of that is so important for a really effective medical writer. And so some of the essential skills that you need to be successful in pharmaceutical medical writing, of course, are technical writing proficiencies, being able to write abstracts, being able to put together posters, clinical trial protocols, again, patient education information, being able to interpret data, being able to understand how the industry operates. All of this is really key. And that brings me to why I believe it's so critical. I think it's a must-have to get board certified in medical affairs. I can give you countless stories of people who have 10, 15, 20 years experience and who tell us at the ACMA, wow, I did not realize how much I didn't know. I didn't realize how much I didn't know. Now think about it. If you're in the industry 15 years, you've become board certified and you're like, wow, I didn't realize that this was, what the Markov model was for pharmacoeconomics. I didn't realize that this is really how you're supposed to put together a target product profile. These are all things that are so, so, so important if you're working with medical affairs. And this is why I think I'm a big believer that you need minimum competency standards if you work within medical affairs, if you work in the pharmaceutical industry. It's not only the right thing to do for your career, it is the right thing to do, period. It is the right thing to do, period, for your career, but also for patients. Because believe me, by becoming board certified in medical affairs, just like when you go to a board certified physician, when you go to an attorney who is licensed and passed their bar, when you go to a pharmacist who has a license, these are people in their profession that are basically by passing and getting their licensure, it's telling you that they meet a minimum standard of competency and knowledge. And this is no different in our profession. I would argue it's equally important because, like I just showed you, we within medical affairs, we're involved in informing clinical practice. So having, a way to assess our competency with minimum standards, it is a must-have. It is a must-have. So what is the board certified medical affairs specialist program like? What's the format? What's the audience? Who should take it? And what's the curriculum look like? So that's what we're going to dig into right now. First, it is an accredited program. It is the only accredited program for medical affairs and MSL professionals in the industry. We are the only accredited organization for medical affairs and medical science liaison. And I'll get into who accredits us in a minute. But that is very, very important because what does it mean? It means that our organization has to meet certain minimum standards of excellence, as does the board certification program. It is self-paced. You can do it at your own pace online. You could do it on your phone. You could do it on an iPad. You could do it on your desktop, laptop. So it's very conducive to busy working professionals. It has a very simple interface. We have a learning management platform that's simple, easy to use, easy to navigate. It gives you 24 hours, 7-day-a-week support. So if you're in the platform, you're going through the modules, which I'm going to get into in a minute, you get access to 24/7 live chat support. This is key because you might have questions. You might have questions about how to use the platform. You might have questions about the content itself. We give you that support. The audience really is anyone who is within medical affairs, medical directors, MSLs, HEOR, medical information specialists, medical writers, pharmacovigilance, you name it. This is really the area that you should be focused on if you want to be working in medical affairs. What's that area? The area of getting board certified in medical affairs. It is absolutely, I think, a necessity. The curriculum is comprised of 20 modules. It is the most comprehensive curriculum in the industry, hands down. It's the most comprehensive. As was mentioned at the outset in my intro, I worked in the industry almost 20 years. I could tell you there's nothing like this in the industry, period. There is no program that is this comprehensive. If you enroll in this program, you really don't need anything else. This is it. This is the end all be all, really, from my perspective, for MSLs and medical affairs professionals, medical writing professionals, etc. It includes a glossary. It includes pre and post knowledge checks, downloadable resources, as well as a practice a question bank to help you prepare for a final board certification exam. You do have to pass the board certification exam successfully to become board certified. The Board Certified Medical Affairs Specialist Program, or BCMAS program, focuses on 5 areas from a curriculum perspective. It focuses on technical competencies, For example, how to design, interpret, and analyze clinical trials, how to understand pharmacoeconomic models, how to interpret evidence-based medicine, how to understand biostatistics, so forth and so on. It also covers life sciences understanding. So do you understand the various areas of life sciences? Today, even if you work with pharmaceutical products, I would argue very strongly that you still need to understand diagnostics. You need to understand medical devices. Very often today, there's this interplay between what happens in terms of pharmacological products and pharmacogenomics, for example, and devices, depending on the delivery system. So that is critical. Regulatory and compliance. Do you understand the various regulatory frameworks? Now, one cool thing about the BCMAS program, if we have listeners outside of the US, is that we have different versions of the BCMS program depending on where you're located. That's right. So if you are in the UK, if you are in Japan, if you're in the Middle East, we have different versions of the BCMS program where the regulatory and compliance framework is actually varied based on where you're located. How do we know? Based on your IP address. So when you go to enroll in the program, our system picks up where you're located and it can actually give you the right program for your region. And that is awesome. No one else does that. It's a very unique thing to the ACMA and the BCMAS program. In addition to all the technical competencies, the regulatory framework, etc., we give you those core business skills. I mentioned at the outset, today it's not good enough to be good technically. It just isn't. Today you've got to have core business skills. You've got to understand how the businesses operate, how the healthcare system ecosystem works. You've also got to understand the processes, how to put together the right advisory boards that are ethical, how to do an ISR or ISS program, how to do medical education and grants properly. You don't want to get dinged for that. How to put together the right speaker program if you have KOLs that you work with. So all of these things are covered in the BCMS program. On top of that, it covers things like AI. AI is becoming a big thing now within all industries in general, but within the life sciences industry in specific. Matter of fact, this is one of the reasons why we now have one of our platforms is we offer AI solutions. So we have AI solutions for medical affairs organizations. It's huge. This is a big need, but how do you use it compliantly? How do you use it ethically? So again, here are some of the areas that we cover. All of this, by the way, can be found on our website, www.medicalaffairsspecialist.org, or if you just Google ACMA, BCMAS, you'll find all this information in much more detail. But this just kind of walks you through some of the different modules and topics that are covered. Again, it's 20 modules, the most comprehensive in the world. Nothing's ever been developed like this for the medical affairs and MSL profession. Matter of fact, in 2021, our organization was invited by the U.S. Congress, which is a very cool experience, by the U.S. Congress Health Subcommittee to talk about standards for our profession. So this is really prime time. So if you're considering wanting to become board certified in medical affairs, this is the time to do it. And I talked earlier about becoming accredited as an organization. So as I mentioned, we are the only accredited organization for medical affairs and MSL professionals. Why this is important? You want to work with an organization that's accredited. It gives more credibility. It means that we have to meet certain standards. We have certain processes that have to be in place. We get audited. Other organizations that have our accreditation, that actually share the same accreditation, you probably have heard of, for example, the American Heart Association, the Joint Commission of Medicine, Postgraduate Institute for Medicine. Even, for example, NASA has the same accreditation. So that's something that we're very proud of. When you become board certified within medical affairs, you actually get a designation, a professional designation in your name. So as you could see here, you get BCMAS right at the end of your name. And that's really nice. It tells the world that you've achieved a certain standard of excellence, a certain distinction. You've joined a community of scholars in the profession. Now, one of the questions that we always get is there data to support that BCMAS, ACMA's training actually delivers results? And the answer is a resounding yes. There's an 80% increase in knowledge. That's a statistically significant p-value of less than 0.001. So we know for a fact, we've done studies on this, when people go through our program, there's a huge increase in knowledge. And by the way, these aren't people that are just looking to break in. The average person that becomes board certified in medical affairs through the ACMA, they have an average 5 to 7 years of experience. So these are people that have been in the industry, and they're still gaining a tremendous amount of knowledge going through the program. On top of that, we've surveyed about 1,200 key opinion leader physicians. We asked them, if Will Soliman got board certified in medical affairs, would it matter to you in terms of interacting with that individual? 87% said yes, it matters when it comes to their competency, when it comes to their credibility, when it comes to me trusting them as a peer. It matters. Think about yourself as a patient. If you go to a physician who's board certified in their profession, it adds an extra layer of credibility. You look at their credentials, and it makes a huge difference. And the value of board certification with BCMAS is huge, not just for individuals. I would even argue for companies, minimizing risk, increasing effectiveness, ensuring consistency. I always tell companies, how do you know that you have a level set organization, that everybody's singing from the same hymn sheet? You don't. You only know this by implementing some type of standardized certification or accreditation. So what are some of the benefits? Greater earning potential. This is a great plus. We actually have data on this as well. This was something that was published recently, where it showed that if you become board certified as a medical affairs specialist through BCMAS, you earn more money. You get greater visibility as a thought leader. You get enhanced expertise, improved knowledge of regulatory and compliance requirements, and it shows a commitment, a dedication to your profession and continuous learning. It matters. It makes a difference. Time and time again, I hear from people, leaders in the field, that tell me, when I get a resume from someone that has BCMAS, it matters. I could tell there's a big difference. At the very least, it demonstrates your commitment to the profession and shows that you validated your skills and knowledge, and that's huge. On top of that, it really puts you into, like I mentioned before, a community of fellow distinguished thought leaders. You become part of this network. We have our own private LinkedIn group online. You can network with those people. Many of them are leaders. So if you're looking to network for a new position, whether you're in the industry or wanting to break in, it's a great asset to have at your fingertips. You have access to a mentorship program. You can get a mentor. You get access to a premier recruiter in the industry that we hook you up with. And you get access to, a fellowship program if you decide to become a fellow of the ACMA at a next level. So just so many different benefits, so many different things, and the proof's in the pudding. We work with over 200 pharma biotech companies, device companies. We've had people from all over the world in 80 countries, thousands of people that have become board certified in medical affairs. It is the number one board certification program for MSLs in medical affairs. As you could tell, I'm very passionate about this because I can tell you, when I was in the industry, very often I worked with people, people that had an MD, a PharmD, a PhD, or other, related degrees. And oftentimes, unfortunately, they weren't always up to snuff. And I can tell you from firsthand experience that impacted patients, and it does impact patients. And if you don't think it does, you're kidding yourself. So I think, it's so important, if you're looking to break into this field, or if you're in this field, to become a board certified medical affairs specialist. As I mentioned, many top organizations do this for their teams. So this is definitely something that's prime time. So with that, I'm going to open it up for questions. I believe Dr. Crabtree is going to moderate and give me the questions. So Dr. Crabtree, I'll turn it over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Solomon, for that really informative presentation, and also for providing the additional background about medical affairs, how it relates to medical writing, and of course, its connection to the BCMAS certification. I'd like to mention that I have the BCMAS certification. I pursued it after starting my role at a medical device company. Because of its comprehensive coverage of medical and regulatory affairs in pharmaceuticals, medical devices, or medical technology, clinical research, and biotech. Um, I felt that earning this certification was important to me because my career involves a diverse set of skills that spanned across clinical science and medical communication, via means of writing and verbal communication. And I wanted to get the certification to supplement that. Um, I know that there are a lot of certs out there uh, that are available depending on your uh, area of expertise or experience. And I chose this one just because I felt that it was right for me. Um, and my job consists of writing and the analyses of clinical literature that feed into larger European regulation reports. And earning the BCMAS was helpful to supplement that, as well as it is a certification that is recognized by my company. First and foremost, it is recognized by my own company, so so that definitely helped as well.
That's
And
great.
so with that, I want to roll over to Q&A. Looks like we actually have quite a few questions that rolled in, including one in the chat, which I'll get to that one also. But the first one is says that it seems to me that the best way to enhance medical outcomes is to improve employee benefits and to help employees access health care that they can afford. Is this a role of medical affairs?
I would say no. That's a different issue altogether. I think the role of medical affairs is to provide information that's going to ultimately help clinicians make better decisions when they're treating patients. So if you have someone that's board certified in medical affairs, they're going to be more competent. They're going to be able to better deliver information more objectively. And that's key, right? Because if you're working with a physician and you're not able to communicate that information accurately, that's a problem. And like I said before, I've seen a lot of examples, unfortunately, of that, right? Because if you're communicating, let's say, clinical trial data results, there's a right way to do it and there's a wrong way to do it. And you yourself have to make sure that you can interpret that information properly. And this is one of the things that the BCMAS program covers is evidence-based medicine and interpreting clinical trial data and how to deliver that information and present it effectively, but also correctly.
Thank you. And our next question is, how much input are medical writers expected to contribute to trial design when writing protocols?
That's a great question. So, as I mentioned before, when I was a medical director, I was really the one working with the key opinion leaders, if that was the case, in developing the protocol and developing, let's say, the endpoints for the clinical trial, et cetera. The role of the medical writer really was to gather as much literature. Almost think of it like doing a literature review, where they're putting together the narrative and the foundational argument for why this is a study that we have to embark on. So they may or may not contribute. It just depends, I think, on the size of the company and the scope of the role of the medical writer. In some companies, they'll just do the writing. In other companies I've been at, they have a more expansive role where they'll contribute and say, hey, when I was doing the literature review, I found X, Y, and Z. We may want to consider this, for example, in terms of inclusion of an endpoint and so forth and so on. So I think it varies.
Once certified, is it a one and done or is there recertification after a certain period?
That's a great question. So, like any board certification program, not just within this area, in any industry, certification is about maintaining knowledge. So, right, it's about making sure that you maintain it. With our board certification program, it's every 5 years. So, you get initially board certified, and then every 5 years, you have to recertify. And actually, one question that I do see, Dr. Crabtree, if you allow me to take it, is how long does it take the average individual to complete the coursework? So, as I mentioned early on, it's self paced and online. So you get 6 months to complete it. So once you enroll and you start the program, you get 6 months. And then from there, you work at your own pace. On average, what I see is people usually finish it within a few weeks. And then another question I saw there was the percent pass rate for the exam. The pass rate is well over 90%. One of the things I'm really proud of is we do a very good job of prepping you. As I mentioned, within before and after each module, there are knowledge check questions. So you go through those questions, you make sure that you understand the content once you finish the module. Then you get a practice question bank, then you get case studies. So by the time you get to the exam, you're in tip-top shape. It's very rare, I would say statistically, that we get people that fail the exam in general, and definitely more than twice. That's extremely rare. So by and large, the first time pass rate is very, very high. And the last thing is there a requirement for continuing education credits to maintain the certification? And the answer is yes. When you go to recertify every 5 years, you have two options. You can either retake the exam and pass, and that would count, or you have to complete 20 hours of continuing education. One other point that I forgot to mention, if you'll allow me, Dr. Crabtree, is that BCMAS, this board certification program, is the only program that offers CE credits. So actually, if you are a U.S. licensed physician, an MD, or if you're a U.S. licensed pharmacist, you can earn CE credits that you can use to maintain your licensure. That's approved by, for physicians, the Accreditation Council for Continuing Medical Education. If you're a pharmacist, the Accreditation Council for Pharmacy Education. And we're the only ones in the industry that provide that. And that's why I said before, if you're an MSL, if you're in medical affairs and you want to get board certified, this is the standard for the industry. I know there's some other programs out there, kind of, mom and pop small programs, but they are not credible. They're not recognized. They're not accredited, and they do not offer CE credits. So I just put that out there because I don't want you wasting money on programs that ultimately are not going to bring you any advantage.
Thank you. And leading off that, there's a question from someone that says, I am based in Europe. However, I would like to learn more about US regulatory and compliance. Is that possible?
Yes, if you're based in Europe and you don't want the European version of the program, as I mentioned, we have a technology that can identify the user's IP address and then give them the program for their region. But if you don't want that, if you still want to take the US version, you can absolutely do that. So you would email us and let us know that that you're based in Europe and that you want to have a different country's program, and we would give you access to that. So that's not a problem.
Is there a requirement to have X amount of years of experience in medical affairs before seeking certification?
That's a great question. So the eligibility requirements are either to have a doctorate level of degree, a terminal degree, or to have at least 2 years of relevant industry experience. Or it could be relevant experience that you may have gone elsewhere. For example, maybe you haven't worked in medical affairs, but you've worked, let's say, at a CRO, clinical research organization, or you worked at a medical education agency, promo or non-promo. Those would be considered relevant experiences and would make you eligible for the program.
And I have this question from a few people of what is the cost?
That's a great question. The cost is $19.99, so $1,999. I will tell you the cost after this first quarter will go up. So if you are looking to board certify, I would recommend that this is the time to do it before the cost goes up at the end of the quarter. But right now it's $19.99. You have two options to pay. You can pay either in full, the entire amount, or you have the option to pay over 3 months. So there is a monthly installment program where you have the option to pay over 3 months.
And also too, if you're someone who works at a medical device or pharmaceutical company or biotech organization that recognizes this certification, definitely check with them to see if if it'll fit into one of their continuing education or professional development benefits to help pay for it.
And
So
I'll
just
say one
something to
thing
look into.
yeah, I agree. That's a good point. Yeah, most companies will reimburse for it, so I haven't seen that ever being an issue. But also, I should say, if you stick to the end, we're going to give you a discount code, and you can get $100 off the program. So make sure you stay till the end to get that discount code, which is going to be good for I think it's 24 hours. So make sure you go use that discount code and apply. It's a great chance to do it, especially now in the beginning of the year. A lot of times, companies are posting for positions. So if you're looking to break in, this is a great time now in Q1 of the year.
Um, Someone says that I have a PharmD and a recent MS and publication, but lack work experience. What is required as far as experience?
So if you get board certified in medical affairs, sometimes, not all the time, sometimes that may be looked at in lieu of experience, because it's the chicken or the egg, right? You hear this argument all the time is I have my PharmD, but I don't have experience. No one's interviewing me. This could give you that edge. right? This could give you that edge. And that's what we see. We see that about 90% of the time, people that get board certified within about 3 months, they're able to land a role. So they're very successful in being able to land a position. So that could give you the edge. And look, I'm not going to lie to you and tell you that everyone is going to be like, wow, you got a board certification, come sign on the dotted line. We're going to give you the job. No, that's not the case, because it's different, right? It's different for everybody. But by and large, what we hear is that people say, as soon as I got my BCMAS and I put it up on my LinkedIn profile, bam, I started to have recruiters reach out to me. Because you have to think about it. If you're a hiring manager, which I was, I used to oversee MSLs, years ago in my career, you want to have somebody that can hit the ground running. Sometimes companies want people with no experience, believe it or not. You might say, why? Because sometimes you want people that are more open-minded to doing things in different ways. If you get someone that has too much experience, they might be set in their ways. So it depends really on that company and what they're looking for. Some companies do want people with experience. One of the recommendations I would give you is look at smaller companies, look like biotechs, look at device companies, which are a little bit behind, let's say, I would say pharmaceutical companies in the evolution of the medical affairs profession. They'll sometimes give people a chance that don't have experience with the BCMAS. But this is a great thing to be able to say and be able to put on your resume that, you're board certified. And when you go to the interview, you're going to be so much more informed in knowledge. And you're going to have so much more in terms of resources, be able to be much more effective in the interview. So I, again, highly would recommend it because it's going to give you a tremendous advantage. If I had two candidates and they both had the same amount of experience or no experience, and one had a board certification, to me, the person with the board certification, I would consider more highly as a former hiring manager. Why? Because it shows that they've gone above and beyond and have done something that demonstrates that they're seriously committed to this area. Because one last point I want to make, I work with people who thought they wanted to work in medical affairs. They came from, for example, from academia or the clinical world. And guess what? They got into it. And then afterwards they were like, this is not for me. And they go back. So they didn't do their homework, right? So this, at the very least, it shows me that, okay, this person's gone above and beyond. They're really committed to the profession. And the data shows that it makes a difference. So the data's there.
I am new to training. How do I get a mentor? Does ACMA provide job search support for newly certified employees?
We do provide you a connection with a recruiter. We do not guarantee a job. However, that being said, by getting board certified in medical affairs, you're going to open up for yourself a huge network of people that you didn't have before. So if you're in training, if you're new to this space, this is the fastest way to do it. A lot of times, it's who you know. So having board certification and then being able to connect with people and that being a commonality can be the game changer for your career. And here's what I tell people. If you think about it, you right now, your main obstacle, let's say, is you're not getting callbacks. You're not getting people, saying, hey, come in for the interview. They're not reaching back out. If you don't do this, nothing will change. And it's going to be harder and harder for you to get that, that foothold and that foot in the door. So now's the time. If you want to do this, do not wait. Do not wait. This is the time to do this because, like I mentioned before, it is quickly becoming seen as a standard in the industry.
There are two questions that are a little bit related, and I'm just going to combine these if
Sure.
this is helpful. So I am brand new to the field, and my plan was to first get certified through the organization as a medical writer. Do you suggest I skip that and use the curriculum to learn the field and get board certified? And the other question is, what is the relevance for someone who works at a medcoms agency?
Oh, I love that question. That's a great question. My answer would be absolutely do the board certification because it's more comprehensive, right? It's going to give you a skill set and a knowledge base that's going to be more applicable to a wider variety of areas. It's going to give you more versatility, right? Why only do, let's say, a certification in medical writing when you could do one in all of medical affairs, which we have medical writing included as one of the areas that we cover. So to me, that makes the most sense. So that's, to me, a no-brainer. Now, in terms of being in medcoms, And I've also worked in Medcoms years ago. This is really important because you work with many clients, right? When you're in Medcoms, you have many different pharmaceutical company clients that you're working with. They, I will tell you, love to see that the people working on their projects have this. I hear it time and time and time again, where pharmaceutical companies say, wow, Will Soliman has his BCMS. They're going to be working on my program. They're working on my product. They love to see that. They love to see that. And it's going to make you more effective and more marketable, whether you stay in Medcoms or whether you go to pharma.
I believe that there are not. I believe that there are not many vacancies to work in the medical affairs in my region. What do you think about this statement?
That's a great question. I think when the person's saying in my region, they're referring to field-based roles as an MSL, I believe. I don't know what the region is. What I would say is today, many roles in medical affairs are remote, even the ones that traditionally prior to COVID-19 were not. I'll say that again. Post COVID-19, there's a many roles in medical affairs that are now remote. And that opens up the gamut for you, even if you're based in an area of the country where there's not a lot of activity and there's a lower population density, you can still find medical affairs positions. As I mentioned before, medical affairs has grown tremendously in the last decade or so, and it's slated to grow even more. Why? Because, like I mentioned, you're seeing a lot more specialty drugs, biologics, et cetera, more complex drugs coming to the market. So there will be always a greater need for people that have advanced degrees and that are board certified in medical affairs. So I think, you need to look maybe a little bit more carefully, maybe get with a recruiter and see, how they might be able to help. But, of course, for field-based medical positions where you have a territory, typically in areas with a lower population density and henceforth a lower number of academic centers, they're going to have a lower number of MSLs, to give you an idea. So it just, it depends, from that perspective, where you are in the country in terms of how many MSL openings, let's say, there are for a particular territory.
Uh, we have time for maybe about 2 to 3 more questions. But this one is interesting and a bit relevant to the discussions around AI and AI tools being used in healthcare. So this question is, what AI tools are being used in med affairs, and how can lawsuits be avoided like Humana and United Healthcare?
That's a really good question. So AI is being used, I would say, for many different things in pharma and in healthcare in general. One, I think the biggest thing is data mining data more effectively, right? More efficiently. Content management is another one, organizing and managing content more effectively. I would also say being able to engage internal and external stakeholders more quickly, more efficiently. That's another major area for the use of AI. I would also say being able to generate content as well. I think, that's something that is probably not just within our industry, but within any industry. I will tell you specific to the ACMA as it relates to our offerings for AI. We have two primary offerings, which I think are phenomenal. I think they're the gold standard in the industry for medical affairs. One is called AI MedInfo. AI MedInfo. So AI MedInfo is actually an AI cloud-based solution that is used for medical information departments to be able to answer inquiries that come in from healthcare providers and patients. It's a phenomenal tool. It can not only do that, but it can also provide insights and analytics to help organizations make better strategic decisions. And the other one's called the Med Affairs AI. So it is an AI tool that basically enables companies and the individuals within companies to ask questions and get answers and manage and organize all their content with the medical affairs. So our AI tool it's trained on your internal content. So there's no more fumbling around and shared drives and folders and trying to find, content on desktops. That's kind of thing of the past. So Med Affairs AI and AI MedInfo.
I'm going to read 2 more questions. With the first one, I really do I appreciate this one because I know that the ACMA has been working hard to create additional opportunities for those who are nurses. So this question is, how can nurses working in patient care setting transition?
That's a great question. So we actually have a more specific program for nurses within the medical affairs space called the Nurse Medical Affairs Professionals Program, or CNMAP. So that's another option. BCMS is certainly eligible. You'd be eligible as a nurse for BCMS, but another option is CNMAP as well. So I would look into that. Now more than ever, again, post COVID, we see a lot of nurses want to make that transition. So would highly encourage you to reach out, ask questions. We'd be more than happy to help. And I see in the chat here, I want to thank Mandeep, who said that he got the BCMAS program and that it helped help them obtain a position, which is great. I'm really happy to hear that. But look, BCMAS doesn't just help you obtain a position. We hear that all the time. Yes, it does that. It can help you to be able to, more mobilize your career and give you that leg up, earn more money. That's all true. But I think, from my perspective, the biggest thing about BCMS is it set the standard for the industry. Before this, there was no standard. Today there is. And that's something that we're immensely proud of. And so, for any of you as we're ending that have questions about board certification in medical affairs, about being able to get board certified, how to do it, anything related to that, let us know. I know we only have 3 minutes left, Dr. Crabtree. I'm just going to go ahead. For those that stuck around, I want to thank you for your attention. This is a discount code that I promised you. So you could see the code there. So if you want to take a quick screenshot, use this code, you get $100 off BCMAS. So again, if you're in the industry, if you want to break into the industry, doesn't matter if you have 5, 10 years, if you're still new in this area, this is something I would highly, highly, highly encourage you to do. It is really becoming the standard for our profession. And I would end by saying, let's do the right thing, not just for our careers, but for patients. Because at the end of the day, we have a responsibility to make sure that our patients are treated in the highest regard possible. And that also comes by us making sure that our clinicians who we educate are most informed. So I'll leave this up there for the next few minutes. But Dr. Crabtree, are there any other questions that you have?
No, thank you. This was great. And I'm really thrilled that there was so much participation, that a lot of people joined and had a lot of great questions. I tried to cover as many as possible. They were flowing in as I was reading through. So I do appreciate all of your input, and also for those who have found it to be helpful to them. And also, please feel free to reach out to me as well on LinkedIn. I have also served as a BCMAS mentor. I've met with a few people to answer their questions, specifically pertaining to those who are interested in the medical writing side of it and in the medical device realm, which the medical device realm is a little bit different from pharmaceutical industry, but there are some similarities in terms of regulation and regulatory requirements. So yeah, please feel free to reach out to me as well. And I'm happy to answer any additional questions that you have as someone who has the certification and who earned it after they started their work. So yes, I like to, yes, we should end it here.
Yes,
And thank
thank
you
you.
everyone.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. And again, for more information, visit www.medicalaffairsspecialist.org, or you can also follow me on my TikTok at Will Soliman. You can also email us at info@acmainfo.org. Again, that's info@acmainfo.org. All right, very good. Well, thank you very much, Dr. Crabtree, and thank you all for attending. Have a great weekend, everyone. Bye-bye.